My wife told me she wanted a divorce, and told my lawyer she wanted everything except our daughter. I looked at my attorney, Harrison, and said, "Give it all to her." The courtroom went totally quiet. People believed I'd lost my mind, or that I was just shattered. But before you judge me, let me share what I found on her phone at 2 in the morning. My name is Denzel. I'm 54 and I work as a building inspector. I use my days walking into structures that look strong from the outside, and I find the rot concealed under fresh paint, cracked foundations, water damage behind drywall, electrical work that'll destroy a house in 5 years. You learn to see the signs early, the small things that show you something's wrong before the whole thing falls down. I never believed I'd have to use those same instincts on my own marriage. Cleo and I had been together for 22 years. We had a daughter, Sonia, who was 16 and smarter than both of us put together. For the majority of those years, things were fine, or at least I believed they were. Cleo worked part-time at a dental office, took care of the house, did the mom thing. We weren't rich, but we were secure. Then, about 10 months ago, she said she wanted to start a business, home staging, she named it, helping people sell houses by making them look better. She said she'd always had an eye for design, that she wanted something of her own. I backed it. I even helped her create the LLC, co-signed on a business credit card, allowed her to use our joint savings to buy first inventory. I thought it was beneficial for her to have a project. I had no idea what I was actually funding. The first sign appeared on a Wednesday night. I woke up around 2 because I heard noise downstairs. I went to check, thinking maybe Sonia couldn't sleep, but it was Cleo in the kitchen with her phone. The blue light brightened her face, and she was smiling in a way I hadn't seen in years. When she saw me, she flipped the phone over quickly. Too quickly. I questioned if everything was okay. She said it was just a client being a bother at weird hours. I nodded and went back upstairs, but something felt wrong. The following morning, her phone was on the counter while she was in the shower. I'm not happy about this, but I looked. The messages were still open. I saw messages like, "The new place is almost ready and you're unstoppable," and then one that made my stomach sink. "Can't wait to be free of the dead weight." I didn't confront her. I didn't yell or toss the phone or demand explanations. I just put it back down, made coffee, and went to work. Because I've learned that when you find a problem in a structure, you don't start hitting with a hammer right away. You document, you measure, you understand how deep it goes. Over the next few weeks, I started seeing things. Small things at first. A throw blanket my mom had provided us years ago disappeared. Then a lamp from the living room. A chair from the dining set. Cleo said she was using them for staging jobs and she'd bring them back, but they never came back. Then bigger objects started vanishing. Our coffee table, the bookshelf from the hallway. And then one Saturday, I came home from checking a commercial site and the couch was gone. Not our couch, but a couch. A cheap beige sectional that looked like it came from a discount warehouse. Sonia walked in behind me, saw it, and just stopped. She looked at me with this tired expression and said, "So the couch just died, I guess." Cleo came down the stairs with her phone in her hand and said it was for now, that the other one was at a staging job and this was just a replacement. Sonia said, "Sure, Mom, whatever," and went upstairs. I watched my daughter's face, and I knew she didn't trust it either. The house was starting to feel hollow, like we were living in a showroom instead of a home. But I still didn't say anything. I kept watching. Then, about 2 weeks later, Sonia came into my home office with her laptop. She had this anxious energy, like she didn't want to tell me but felt like she had to. She moved the screen toward me and said, "Dad, I found something strange. It was Facebook Marketplace. Cleo was selling our things, our belongings, under a fake name. The account wasn't hers. It was listed under Jennifer Callahan, but the pictures were taken in our house. I could see our walls, our floors. There was the throw blanket, the lamp, the coffee table, all listed as gently used with prices that were way below what they were valued at. Sonia asked if I knew about this. I told her I didn't. She asked if she should say something to her mom. I told her, no, let me take care of it. I took screenshots of everything, made a folder on my computer, started recording everything. This wasn't staging. This was liquidation. She was selling off our home piece by piece, and she was concealing it. Then the real blow came. I got a letter in the post from the 529 plan we'd created for Sonia's college fund. There was a withdrawal, $8,000 gone. I called the company right away. They told me the withdrawal was authorized by the joint account holder, Cleo Bowen. I asked when, and they said 3 weeks ago. I hung up and just sat there looking at the wall. That money was supposed to be untouchable. We'd been adding to it since Sonia was born. It wasn't for us, it was for her future. When Cleo got home that night, I asked her about it. I kept my voice steady. I said I saw the 529 statement. She didn't even react. She said it was needed for the business, that it was legally our money and she'd pay it back. I told her it was Sonia's money. She said kids manage since student loans exist and that I was being dramatic. I just nodded. I didn't argue. But that night, I understood something. She wasn't building a business. She was building an exit. And she didn't care who she hurt on the way out.
So I started recording everything. Every transaction, every receipt, every piece of furniture that left the door. I made spreadsheets. I took photos. I followed every dollar. And then I found a payment on our joint credit card I didn't recognize. A storage unit. Industrial area, $180 a month. I didn't question her about it. I just added it to the records because I knew what was coming. And when it did, I was going to be ready. Here's what I learned from 20 years of inspecting buildings. The most dangerous problems aren't the ones you can see right away. It's the slow leak behind the wall, the hairline crack in the foundation that grows an inch every year. By the time most people notice, the damage is total. Cleo's plan was the same. Gradual, calculated, planned to look normal until it was too late. But she made one major mistake. She assumed I wouldn't pay attention to the details. Have you ever overlooked small warning signs in a relationship, thinking they'd just go away on their own? For the next 6 weeks, I lived like I was doing the most important inspection of my career. I had a filing system in my home office that would make an accountant cry with joy. Bank statements with transactions highlighted in yellow, credit card bills with charges circled in red, photos of every piece of furniture that had vanished, time-stamped and cataloged. I had a spreadsheet tracking the storage unit payments, another one for the business expenses that made no sense. Cleo thought I was just working late, busy in permit applications and violation reports. She had no idea I was building a case. The storage unit was the thing that bothered me most. Why would someone running a proper staging business need a separate storage facility when we had a 2-car garage that was mostly empty? I drove past it one Saturday morning. Industrial area, chain link fence, units that looked like they hadn't been painted since the 90s. I didn't go in. I didn't need to. I just needed to know it was real. I needed one person I could trust to look at the numbers, someone who'd tell me if I was imagining things or if this was as bad as I thought. I called Fred, my buddy from high school who'd become a CPA. We met at his place one evening, just the two of us, in his basement. I brought the files. Fred went through everything with his reading glasses on, making little sounds every few pages. After about 40 minutes, he looked up at me and said, "She's either awful at business or she's hiding money, maybe both." He showed me the patterns, money going into the business account but not much coming out where it should, expenses that didn't align with revenue. The staging business showed almost no profit, but she was spending like it was doing great. Then Fred said something that changed everything. He said, "Denzel, listen to me. Ownership isn't just about assets, it's about liabilities too. If she takes everything in a divorce, she takes all the debt, all the taxes, all the fines that come with it." I sat back in my chair and just looked at him. He asked if I understood what he was saying. I told him I understood perfectly. 3 weeks later, Cleo served me with divorce papers. Not in some big public scene, just at breakfast on a Sunday morning. Sonia was still asleep upstairs. Cleo's sister Caroline was there, sitting at our kitchen table like she'd been invited to a business meeting. Cleo had a list. She wanted the house, both cars, 100% of the business, and 50-50 on my pension. Then she said, "Sonia can stay with you. I don't have time to handle a teenager right now." Caroline nodded like this was all perfectly reasonable. I just sat there with my coffee. I didn't respond. I didn't argue. Then I heard a sound from the hallway. Sonia was standing there in her pajamas. She'd heard everything. She looked at her mother and said, "Wow, Mom, really feeling the love here." Cleo told her not to be dramatic. Sonia didn't say anything else. She just turned around and went back upstairs. I heard her bedroom door close. That's when I knew I wasn't just protecting money or things anymore. I was protecting my daughter from being wiped out. I looked at Cleo and said, "Okay, you can have it." Caroline's face lit up like she'd just won the lottery. Cleo looked surprised, like she'd been expecting a fight and didn't know what to do when she didn't get one. She asked if I was serious. I told her I'd have my lawyer prepare the papers. Then I left the table and went to work. That afternoon, I called Harrison Braddock. He'd handled a property dispute for me years ago, the kind of attorney who reads every word of every document like he's disarming a bomb. I also looked at apartments and signed a rental agreement on a 2-bedroom place across town by the end of the week. Sonia needed somewhere steady that wasn't filled with constant tension, and I needed space to think clearly. I met Harrison at his office the next day and presented everything. The marketplace listings, the 529 withdrawal, the storage unit, the business financials that Fred had gone through. Harrison looked at it all and said, "This is gold, but we don't show it off."
He laid out the plan. We'd give her what she wanted, but we'd arrange it so she couldn't escape later. The house would be hers, but she'd have to refinance it in her name within 90 days or it goes up for sale. No delays, no excuses. The $8,000 from Sonia's college fund would be offset against her share of assets, paid back right away. The business would be hers completely, which meant all the debts, all the supplier obligations, all the potential tax problems that came with unreported income. Harrison wrote the agreement. It was simple on the surface. She gets the house, the cars, the business. I keep my pension. She gets nothing from it. Everything disclosed in the appendices, Exhibits C through F. 214 pages of financial records, business documents, transaction histories, all attached, all incorporated. Harrison told me most people don't read the appendices, they just initial and sign. 2 weeks later, Cleo tried to get clever. She filed an emergency motion claiming I was squandering marital assets. She said I bought a boat. I don't own a boat, never have. Harrison submitted my bank records showing no boat purchase. The judge dismissed it in about 5 minutes. Then someone filed an unknown complaint with my employer claiming I'd taken bribes on inspections. It went nowhere because it wasn't true, but it was clearly meant to shake me. Then Carolyn showed up at the house one evening demanding to see Sonia, claiming it was an emergency. We'd installed a video doorbell by then. Sonia recorded the whole thing. Carolyn spent 10 minutes at the door insisting Cleo had rights and that I was poisoning Sonia against her mother. Sonia told her through the intercom that if her mom wanted to talk, she could call like a normal person. Carolyn finally left. Harrison said, "Keep all of it. This is a tool if we need it." The mediation was scheduled for early June. We met at a conference room downtown. Cleo showed up with her lawyer, Debbie Holt, who had a name for being aggressive but not particularly detail-oriented. Carolyn was there too, sitting behind Cleo like a coach. Debbie had the settlement agreement in front of her. She was flipping through pages fast, barely stopping. Harrison sat next to me, completely calm. The mediator went through the terms. Cleo gets sole ownership of the house, the cars, the business assets. I get my pension. No split. Custody of Sonia stays with me. $8,000 offset for the college fund withdrawal. Carolyn was leaning forward, whispering to Cleo something about how the pension was where my real money was and she should fight for it. Cleo ignored her. She was too focused on the house, the cars, the thought of keeping everything. Debbie got to the signature page and pointed. She told Cleo to initial here, here, and here, then signed at the bottom. I watched Cleo sign without reading a single appendix. Debbie barely looked at them either. Harrison cleared his throat and said, "Just to confirm, Exhibits C through F are incorporated as attached, all 214 pages." The mediator asked if both parties acknowledged receipt and review. I said yes. Cleo said yes. Debbie said yes. Harrison made a note. The final hearing was set for June 14th in front of Judge Juliet Cameron. We all stood up. Cleo looked at me with this little smile like she'd just tricked me. Carolyn squeezed her shoulder. They walked out looking like they'd won. Harrison packed up his briefcase and said she has no idea what she just signed. I asked if he was sure this would stand.
He said, "Denzel, not reading properly disclosed documents isn't grounds for appeal. It's malpractice, and that's her lawyer's problem, not ours." We left the building. I sat in my truck for a few minutes. Sonia texted asking how it went. I told her I'd explained at home. She sent back a thumbs up. I started the engine and drove out of the parking lot. Cleo thought she'd won. She had no clue what was hidden in those appendices, and in 10 days, Judge Juliet Cameron was going to read them out loud. Let me pause here and ask you something. When someone asks for everything in a divorce, what are they really asking for? Most people think it's just about money or property, but here's the truth. They're asking to own the consequences too. Every debt, every obligation, every mistake they made that they think is hidden. Cleo wanted control. What she got was accountability. Would you have done the same thing, or would you have fought to keep what was yours? The morning of June 14th, I woke up at 5:30 and couldn't fall back asleep. I made coffee, sat at the kitchen table, and watched the sun rise through the window. Sonia came down around 6, already dressed. She asked if I was nervous. I told her no, just ready for it to be over. She poured herself orange juice and said, "Dad, whatever occurs today, I'm glad I'm here with you." I didn't trust myself to say much, so I just nodded. We got to the courthouse at 8:45. Harrison was waiting outside the courtroom in his usual dark suit, briefcase in hand. He asked if I was ready. I told him I'd been ready for months. Sonia squeezed my arm and said she'd wait in the hallway. She didn't want to be in the room when it all happened. We walked in and took our seats at the table on the left. Cleo was already there, on the right, with Debbie. Carolyn was in the first row behind them, dressed like she was going to a wedding. Debbie had a thin folder in front of her. Harrison had 3 binders stacked neatly, each one tabbed and labeled. Judge Juliet Cameron came in at 9 on the dot. Everyone stood. She was in her early 60s, gray hair pulled back, the kind of judge who'd seen every trick in the book and had no tolerance for nonsense. She sat down, opened the file, and told everyone else to sit. She looked at both of us and said we were here to finalize the dissolution of marriage and that both parties had agreed to terms at mediation. She asked if we both understood and accepted those terms as written. Cleo said, "Yes, Your Honor." I said, "Yes, Your Honor." Judge Juliet Cameron started going through the standard language: property division, no spousal support, custody arrangements. It was all routine, exactly what we had agreed to. Carolyn was smiling.
Then Harrison stood up. He said, "Your Honor, just for the official record, the settlement agreement incorporates Exhibit C through F as attached, 214 pages of financial disclosures and business documentation." Judge Juliet Cameron looked up. She asked if both parties had received copies of these exhibits. Harrison said, "Yes, Your Honor, given at mediation and acknowledged in writing." The judge turned to Debbie and asked, "Did you review these exhibits with your client? Yes or no?" The courtroom got very quiet. Debbie froze. Her mouth opened, but nothing came out. She looked down at her thin folder like the answer might be in there. Judge Juliet Cameron repeated the question, slower this time. Debbie finally said, "Your Honor, we reviewed the main terms of the agreement." Judge Juliet Cameron's expression didn't change, but her tone dropped about 10 degrees. She said, "Counselor, that's not what I asked." She flipped to a page in the file and said, "According to the mediator's notes, you signed a statement confirming receipt and review of all attached exhibits. Is that your signature?" Debbie said yes, but Your Honor, if I may explain. Judge Juliet Cameron said, "No, you may not. I asked a yes or no question, and you answered it." Harrison sat down. I could feel Cleo starting to tense up next to Debbie. Judge Juliet Cameron opened one of the binders in front of her. She said, "Let's go through what's really in these exhibits, since apparently we need to." She started reading. Exhibit C shows unpaid vendor obligations for the staging business totaling $47,000. Exhibit D documents a storage facility with built-up late fees and code violations totaling approximately $6,000. Exhibit E includes letters from 3 different creditors regarding unpaid invoices. Exhibit F contains copies of business income records that appear to show unreported revenue, which may start an inquiry from the IRS. Caroline's smile was gone. Cleo's face had gone completely white. Debbie was flipping through papers, trying to find something to say. Judge Juliet Cameron kept going. She said, "Mrs. Bowen, you agreed to take sole ownership of the business and all assets linked to it. which means you also took sole responsibility for all debts, obligations, and potential tax liabilities connected to those assets. Do you understand that now?" Cleo didn't answer right away. She turned to Debbie and said, "You told me everything was fine." Debbie said, "We can file a motion to reconsider based on—" Judge Juliet Cameron cut her off. She said, "Based on what, counselor? Based on your client not reading documents that were properly disclosed and that you confirmed reviewing." She looked at Cleo and said, "Mrs. Bowen, your husband disclosed everything. It was in the appendices. You signed a document saying you got it. This agreement is exactly what you asked for." Caroline stood up in the gallery and said, "This is fraud. This is a trap." Judge Juliet Cameron told her to sit down immediately or she'd be taken from the courtroom. Caroline sat. Cleo looked across the table at me. Her eyes were wild, desperate. She said, You knew all of this." I kept my voice calm. I said, "I disclosed everything, Cleo. It was in the appendices. You signed acknowledging receipt. You wanted sole ownership, and you got it." Harrison added, "Your Honor, just to be clear, all financial records were obtained by the law. All debts listed are real business obligations. Nothing was hidden or made up." Judge Juliet Cameron closed the binder. She said, "I'm going to be very clear. The time to see what you were signing was before you signed it, not after. This agreement was negotiated, mediated, and signed by both parties. I'm entering it as written." She looked at Debbie and said, "Counselor, your client's failure to read properly disclosed documents is not grounds for appeal. That's a malpractice issue between you and her." Debbie's face went red. Judge Juliet Cameron continued. She said, "Mrs. Bowen, you have 90 days to refinance the house in your name alone, or the property will be listed for sale. No extensions. The $8,000 offset for the college fund withdrawal will be paid within 30 days. You keep full ownership and full liability for the business." She signed the order. She said, "This dissolution is final. We're adjourned." The gavel came down. Everyone stood. Cleo just sat there, staring at the table. Caroline was already heading for the door. Harrison shook my hand and said, "I'll file the refinance motion in 91 days if needed." We walked out into the hallway. Sonia was waiting on a bench by the windows. She stood up when she saw me. I told her it was done. She asked how bad it was for her mom. I said, "Bad enough." Then I told her the judge locked in the offset. Her college fund would be complete again within 30 days. Sonia's eyes got bright. She hugged me hard and said, "You absolute legend." We left the courthouse. Over the next 3 months, I watched it all fall apart for Cleo exactly the way Harrison said it would. She couldn't refinance because her credit was ruined and the business income didn't pay for the mortgage. Harrison filed the motion. Judge Juliet Cameron ordered the house listed for sale. It sold fast, but for less than Cleo hoped, because she was desperate. After the mortgage payoff, the liens, the property taxes, and the realtor commission, there was almost nothing left. The storage unit got inspected after a complaint about fire code violations. The lease was ended, and she got hit with penalties for wrong storage of flammable materials. Creditors started taking inventory to cover debts. The staging business fell apart in about 6 weeks. Then the IRS sent letters asking for documentation and scheduling an audit. They wanted explanations for why reported income didn't equal bank deposits. Caroline moved in with Cleo. I heard they lasted about a month before the fighting got too bad. Sonia stayed with me in the apartment. She made honor roll that semester, 3.6 GPA. We started new habits, movie nights on Saturdays, pancakes on Sunday mornings. She seemed happier, like a weight had been lifted. One night, she asked me if I felt bad about what happened to her mom. I thought about it for a while. I told her I felt bad that it ended up this way, but I didn't feel bad for protecting her future and making sure her mom faced the results of her own choices. Sonia nodded. She said, "Good, because I don't either. Here's what I want you to learn from this. Sometimes the best thing you can do is step back and let people have exactly what they asked for, especially when they're so sure they know better than you." Cleo wanted everything. She got it, and it destroyed her. The house I've learned to inspect isn't just made of wood and concrete. It's made of choices. Some people build solid foundations. Others cut corners, hide the damage, and hope no one notices until they're gone.
But in the end, every structure gets inspected, and when it does, the truth comes out. Cleo thought she was playing me. She thought I was too trusting, too passive, too focused on my work to see what she was doing. She was wrong. I saw everything. I just waited for the right moment to let her bury herself. If there's one thing my job has taught me, it's this. You can paint over rot, but it doesn't make the rot go away. It just makes it someone else's problem when the walls finally come down. Cleo wanted everything. She got it, and it destroyed her. Me, I'm sitting in a small apartment with my daughter, eating pancakes on Sunday mornings, watching her succeed. That's the foundation I built, and it's the only one that matters. What do you think about this story? Let me know in the comments. Drop a like and don't forget to subscribe for more real-life stories.